All right, everybody, welcome to another amazing episode of the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. And today we're going to roll on into business. I know y'all been waiting for episodes before we get into some business stuff. Well, I brought the best, the absolute best to talk about business. I met this amazing lady about 3 years ago. I saw a flyer for her amazing event, MogulCon, and I showed up and what I witnessed. Okay, so I'm gonna be brutally honest because I can't, because it's my show. You go to a lot of events in Atlanta and people say top notch, or they say black excellence, and you get there, you're just like, this is even basic. But I can honestly say when I showed up at that hotel in Dunwoody and walked through those doors, from the time I walked there and saw the big pink thing that said MogulCon to the time I walked in those rooms, I was floored. And it's been nothing but great ever since. She's one of the few people, I'm going to continue to say this, she's one of the few people that can intimidate me. And y'all that know me know that is not an easy feat. Dr. Felicia Phillips, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous because I'm here with you. We always have an amazing time. And I know we're going to get down to business.
Look, you've been on 110 ever since MogulCon, which is what, last weekend?
Last weekend.
You've been on 110 since. Because even when we did a small interview, I was like, oh, she ready. She ready for this year. All right, so let's get down to brass tacks. Tell me about you, your beginnings, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So this is my 31st year, Ricardo.
In business?
In business. Yes. And I will tell you, I often think about how I started. I'm a third generation, really a fourth generation. I just found out not too long ago, entrepreneur.
Don't tell me you found out from Ancestor.com.
No, I didn't.
I was about to say, did you find out through Ancestor.com?
Luckily, I'm blessed that I still have my father and his siblings. And they are very much storytellers of their history and their ancestors. And I was having a conversation with my uncle, and I was saying, it's nice to be able to say I'm a third generation entrepreneur. And he said, no, you're actually a fourth generation entrepreneur.
Wow.
And what I learned was on both sides of my family, they owned land, farms. I had one of my great uncles was a navigator in the port of Charleston. His yacht was named after my grandmother, whose name was Thelma.
Wait, you said his yacht?
Yes.
I'm not doing this with you today, Dr. I'm not doing this with you today.
So imagine how I felt hearing this.
Well, I mean, okay, so we're talking about the yacht. How long ago was that? Because we talking about.
So this was my grandfather's brother.
Aren't we fastly approaching Jim Crow and all that stuff?
That's
for him to own a yacht?
Yes. And that was not easy in Charleston. I mean, there was
I'm from
a lot
Walterboro,
of
so I'm trying to figure out how you even pulled. Did they tell you the story how you pulled that off?
No, they did not tell me the story.
You need to find a story. That's gotta be.
I'm now eager to learn more, right? And just hearing how my ancestors, some of the things they fought through, and knowing that my great-great-grandmother, Rachel Brown, was the first interracial official marriage there. Right. And so that had to be overwhelming. And so, you think when you get to a certain point that and you know where you come from. But I am learning that I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. Right. And so when I think about if they were able to amass these things during segregation, right?
I mean, real
segregation, right?
Yeah.
My father will tell stories of how he would have his younger brother on his back and they would be picking cotton and sweet potatoes and all these things, right? So not that far removed, okay? And so when I have the opportunity to do what I do, and that is working with minority and diverse businesses, and being able to say, I understand, not just from the standpoint of me being in business for 31 years, but now understanding that my ancestors were in business for themselves. And so I take that very seriously, which is why you will always see that anything I do is going to be over 100%. Because I think what happens oftentimes is when we hear a black, quote unquote, black event, we kind of lower our expectations, okay?
It's sad but true.
It's sad, it's very sad. True. But that's what happens. And when you walk into MogulCon, I want to engage every sense. Everything that you think that you know and show you that there is more.
Just for concept purposes, we're not talking about $1,000 woman. This is not a $1,000 woman sitting next to me. This is like $1 million woman. These are the kind of deals that you do, brokering sponsorships and advertising with Delta and things of that magnitude. give the people an idea of some kind of deals and stuff that you broker, just to.
Oh gosh. Okay, so let's go back a few years. I think one of the first things that I was able to do was a conference at Phillips Arena. We partnered with the WNBA, and that was really awesome. It was a mastermind event for women in business. And I believe that that's when people began to find out more about me and the work that I did. And from there, we evolved to partnerships with corporations, global corporations like IKEA, Delta Airlines, like you mentioned, Wells Fargo, who is a big supporter of not just MogulCon, but of the work that I do. And the list goes on and on, from State Farm. I mean, it's so many that now, and even at the government level, I've had the opportunity to work with EPA, FDIC. And those are relationships that I cherish. And I will tell you this, my success is because of relationships. I think that we're so busy in the technical of business. So you got to market, you got to be on social media, you have to do all these things. But the one thing that will keep you in business is relationships. Because I've seen the downturn of the economy. Of course, we've just gone through a pandemic. I'm still standing, right? Contracts are still, we had one of our best years in my consulting agency during the pandemic, when companies were letting consultants go. And we experienced that as well. But we still came out on top. And a lot of that was simply picking up the phone, talking to people, understanding and listening to what their need was, and then giving them a solution to it. You know, we're always, as entrepreneurs, wanting to sell, buy what I have. And what we forget to do is listen to the need of our potential customer. Because what people will do is tell you what they want. You just have to be willing to listen and then be fast enough and quick enough on your feet to be able to provide a solution.
You about to start something. So I'm going to take our first break, and then we come back. We're going to have more with the Dr. Felicia Phillips on the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, we are back on this week's episode of the Leadership Blend television show with your amazing host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my very special guest that brings me excitement, Dr. Felicia Phillips.
Yes.
Okay, so I decided to do a little research.
Okay.
So in my research, I read that your grandmother said that it was something special about you, and she put $500 in a bank account for you.
Yes, she did.
Tell me about that.
So my great-grandmother was an entrepreneur. She owned a child care center, she owned a salon, and she literally bought the entire street that she lived on.
Seriously?
Seriously, right in the city of Atlanta. And she sold one lot to her sister. She was on one, the salon, and then her child care center. And she had a women's club. And I talk about this often because I think about what I'm doing, right, with women. And my job was to greet the ladies when they came in. I would take their handbags, their coats. But what I laid witness to were women who were truly committed to themselves, to their community, to their families. And last year for Christmas, my brother found one of her journals. And this journal is from the 50s. And in the journal, everybody that she worked with that was a member of their organization, she had their names. Attached to their names, she had every member of their family, a scripture, and what the organization had done for them. And so you would see husband lost job, we gave $500.
Oh, wow.
Or we fed them, or we helped, like they would help build schools, all types of things. And so when I look at what I'm doing today, it makes me full to know that things come full circle. And so her name was Maddie Hutchinson. And what she did, so one day I'm helping her and she pulls me to the side. She said, listen, I love all my great-grandchildren. She said, but it's something different about you, girl. And she said, stop waiting for people to give you an opportunity. Kick the door in. Stop waiting for them to open the door. So this particular day, she said, I'm gonna invest in you. She said, you're 16 now. And I'd always been a hard worker. I tell this is a funny story. Back in the day, kids would get fake IDs to go to clubs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I got one, but it's because I wanted to go to work. I wanted my own.
Really? Yeah, you
I
were a
was
special
12,
kind of child.
12 turning 13.
You were
right?
a special kind of child.
And she said, I like that about you. You're not waiting for things to happen. And so we went downtown Atlanta. There was a bank, Georgia Federal, and we opened the account. And that day, she took me through every account she had, whether it was a money market account, business checking, all these different things. And what that said to me was, this woman is not just because she's my great grandmother, but she's handling her business. She has her affairs in order. And that opened my mind to the fact that because I am a Black woman and that's how society categorizes me, I'm not limited by what they see. I'm only limited by what I believe about myself. If she could see something in me, I should be able to see it in myself. So I made a decision once I graduated from high school that my parents had given me all they could. And I knew that I wanted something different. My mother shared something with me. It was a paper I'd written on. I was 8. And on the paper I said, at 25, I will own my own business.
And what do you do with a child like that? Like, why do you
That's
even...
a great question. And I'll tell you what my mom told me. She said, you were 4. She said, we went to a restaurant. She said, and all the kids are playing in the family. She said, and I looked over at you and you were sitting in the booth and you had your legs crossed. She said, you were just looking. And she said, I knew then, and several other things. She said, I knew then something was different. My mother, because she saw what was in me, I would be 6, 7 years old and she would be practicing public speaking. I started speaking in plays and acting and taking drama classes very early. And it was funny, I tell the story how, kids talk about parents beating them and this type of thing. My mother was like, you're not going to eat unless you can come to the table and discuss current events.
Oh, wow.
It was a different type of upbringing, but I can appreciate because I would not be able to do what I'm doing today had the foundation not been laid.
So let me ask you this, because I was watching a show and the conversation came up about Black women in safe spaces.
Yes.
And the opposition was, well, why do Black women need a special space? And if we're all minority women, why do they need a separate space? How important is it for Black women to have a safe space?
So let's look at what we know. What we know is that Black women are the fastest group of entrepreneurs growing right now in these United States, right? But uncharacteristically of that stat is the fact that we are making the least amount of money than any other ethnic group.
Really?
Yes. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. These are facts that sometimes are pushed down by saying things like, Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, because automatically I would assume.
So in your mind, you make an assumption. That's very dangerous because Black women go into business out of necessity, not opportunity. We go into business because we're not making ends meet. We need to make more money. We're frustrated with our job. We're not getting promoted on the job. And so we want something better for ourselves. Whenever we walk in a door, because of how the media portrays us, the first thing people think is that we're incapable of success. Because we're not always portrayed in a positive life. Yes, you have one-offs like Oprah and other women who have been successful, but they are so far out of reach to the everyday Black woman. The first thing people see is our skin color. We still have not gotten past that. We are still classified by that. So do we need a safe place for Black women? Absolutely. Absolutely. We're being judged every day based on circumstances that are out of our control. So am I apologetic that I provide a safe place for Black women? Not at all.
All right. So when I read the story about your grandmother and her seeding that $500 into you,
yes,
how important is that? Like, 'cause
I think it's very important. I think everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. If you look at, even on your 9-to-5 job, right? If you look at when people are being evaluated, they want to know that they're doing a good job, right? That they are appreciated for the level of work and service that they provide. I don't care what you do, you want to know that you have an impact at some level. What she did for me was encourage me. anytime somebody's willing to put their money behind you, and even at 16, I was smart enough to know that that meant something.
All right, we're going to take our second break. I have some other questions. They're going to take us in a whole other segment. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more with Dr. Felicia Phillips on the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so we are back on today's episode with the amazing Dr. Felicia Phillips. So when we left, we were talking about MogulCon House, a safe space for African-American women. Yeah. But that was spawned because I watched an episode of a show, and it was an African-American woman who had a retreat for Black women, and she was sitting with a Latina and another biracial individual. And their question was, well, you know, why does it have to be just for Black women? She has a Black husband and Black kids. So I was posing that to you.
Yes. So one of the reasons I created MogulCon for Black women is because they truly do need a safe place where they can come and learn all the things that they don't get on a daily basis. Nobody is positioning us for the opportunity. Remember I said we go into business out of necessity, not opportunity. And so when you are dealing with a group of people who have been oppressed for hundreds of years, only being free to do things less than 50 years, maybe,
yeah,
right? So you have to understand that because the wealth gap is so big. Let me give you an example. During the 50s, white families were given a $50,000 investment for home ownership. That did not include Black families. That did not include minorities, right? So Black families, our communities were redlined, which meant that it was not a good investment to lend money to purchase real estate in Black communities, which furthered the wealth gap. So, was it a safe place for us? No. Was somebody helping us or creating anything for us? No. It doesn't mean that I'm saying we have to separate ourselves, but what we have to be clear about is that we need opportunities that don't create equality so much, create equity. Equity is if I am 2 feet tall and you're 5 feet tall, I'm going to give you the lift that you need so we can be at the same height. We focus so much on equality that we forget that equity is what gets us to the next level. You can't be equal if there is no equity.
I kid you not, every conversation I've had in the last 2 months has revolved around this, from education to business to gaming, because I just talked to a lady in gaming. This notion of equity. How much of a difference does generational wealth mean? How much of a difference?
It's a huge difference. So let's just use an example. If you look in the African American community, when our parents die, all too often we're not left an inheritance, right?
That's true.
An inheritance helps you to gain the wealth, the assets that you can build on, right? It's not about getting money that you can go out here and splurge with. It's about building. But in order to build, you have to educate yourself. You have to surround yourself with the people who can show you how to do what you've never been exposed to. That's what MogulCon is about. It's about exposing you to what you've never had the opportunity to learn. If I sat here and I polled your audience and I said, how many of you are in small business? There may be a lot of hands. Yeah. But if I ask, how many of you are certified as an MBE or you're participating in a supplier diversity program? That wouldn't be very many people. That's your leg up. That's what I'm talking about. You see, we've got to get away from the notion, oh, we never got our 40 acres and a mule. Oh, nobody ever did this. What we've got to understand is where we are right now and what's available to us. That's why I created MogulCon. Yes, it's a safe place for Black women because I'm teaching you what you don't know. And sometimes you don't know until you're already in it. So exposure is very important. We're getting left behind.
Literally.
And because we have a few trinkets of material success, then we want to equate that to, I'm successful. Well, no, you're not. Because if I strip all that away, what is left? What legacy are you really leaving?
I want you to explain that statement you made that Black women start business out of necessity. Explain that.
So necessity is, I may be making $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year on my job. But in actuality, in order for me to live a stress-free life, I only need to make $75,000 to be able to pay my bills on time, be able to do things like take a nice vacation with my family, buy my children what they need, and not always have to look at what do we have to have, right? Necessity, luxury, disposable income. That's where the business comes in, okay? I need to make an extra $20,000, $30,000 a year. Oh, you know what? Everybody loves the fact that I bake great cakes. I think I can turn that into a business. Well, let me say this. A skill set of baking cakes and running a business is two different things. So you may not be the best at running the business, but you're an excellent baker. But will the business survive? So you may make some money in the beginning because you're doing it out of passion, out of a necessity. Not because a larger company, say Walmart, said, we love your cakes and we'd like to put you in every store. The opportunity.
So what's in that gap? Because that's kind of what we're saying. There's a gap right there. So what's in that gap?
So a lot of it is the exposure, right? Finding the platforms that are going to teach us. See, so let me back up. Let's talk about just us as a race. We've experienced a lot of rejection, okay? And so what rejection does is it prevents you from stepping outside that door and getting the information that you need because you don't want to be rejected. You don't want to seem as if you don't know. Mm-hmm. So if we can't Google it or find it on YouTube University, we walk away.
That's true.
Right? A confused mind walks away. What I'm allowing you to do is come and say, I don't know. Because I'm going to then share and show you. I'm going to have the people there. We had 2 SBA directors at MogulCon this year. One for the state of Georgia, one for the state of Tennessee. You're not going to see that at a lot of places,
no.
Right? So I'm unapologetic about it because it has to be done.
Absolutely.
It's an education process. It's getting exposure.
What are some of the biggest things that you see?
Some of the biggest things is, one, we'll get an idea and go into business. We don't have a plan. We haven't done a strategic plan. We haven't looked 3 to 5 years ahead. We're not being honest about the capital that we need in order for this to be successful. And we go into it as a solopreneur. Instead of going into it understanding that we're going to have a economic impact in our community by creating jobs. It's a difference.
Okay, like I said, I have more thoughts, and it's going to take us to a whole nother segment. So we're going to take our third break, and when we come back, we'll have more with Dr. Felicia Phillips on the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so we're back on this week's episode with the amazing Dr. Felicia Phillips. Okay, so I spoke to you before because we're on the heels of MogulCon. MogulCon was last weekend, and when I spoke to you briefly, I asked you, what has COVID presented as opportunities and adversity for Black women?
So we lost an astronomical amount of small businesses in the Black community because of COVID. What it showed us is that we have to prepare the foundational aspects of our business. I go back to what I said. We're going to business, we're passionate, right? We just want to get out here, but we're not actually doing the foundational things that will keep us in business 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. The opportunities there were a lot of things that happened for online businesses, right? So people are shopping at home. We needed PPE that allowed a lot of people to get into the PPE business. So a lot of businesses that we may not have considered before around health and wellness, online shopping, began to present themselves. And so that was an easier aspect of I can be at home with my family and I can sell these products and still make money. What we found was when it was time in the initial round of the PPP loan and EIDL loan, the economic impact disaster loan, what happened, because we're not putting accounting principles in place, we don't have QuickBooks or Sage or whatever accounting software you might use, we could not see our financials. meaning we couldn't see our cash flow, we couldn't see our profit and loss, we couldn't provide balance sheets, and so that prevented us from getting the capital that we needed. So now we're seeing businesses that have been around for 30 plus years that are closing their doors, right? Those are jobs that we're losing in our community. And let's face it, people got lazy because people began to get the money and then they didn't want to go to work. So now what we see a supply and demand shortage. We go to restaurants, they don't have enough waiters and waitresses. And so there are a lot of challenges in this pandemic that have developed because I think it was good that we wanted to provide financial assistance, but there's also a ramification because we provided financial assistance.
Mentally with Black women, what did you see?
Hurt, tired, stress. So you think, it's already stressful being a small business owner. But now my kids aren't in school, so now I'm a teacher. I didn't go to school to be a teacher, okay? So now I have that. Because they're home, I've got to feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And so there were so many aspects that came to reality or fruition, I would say, because of the pandemic, that it left a lot of people broken. And let's not talk about all the lives that were lost. People lost loved ones and are still losing loved ones. This MogulCon was different. I found myself praying with a lot of people.
During the conference?
During the conference. And I think it's because that hurt and the lack of one-on-one conversation in person. There's something about when you can get that positive energy and look someone in their eye and smile them or just at them or greet them. What happened at MogulCon was that emotion of being in a corporate event for the first time for a lot of people. And so these feelings start to come out. Feelings of my business may be failing or maybe not is doing as well because I'm having to take care of the children and all the other responsibilities if you're a caregiver. I'm 50, so I'm at that age where we're known as the sandwich generation. We have children and we're taking care of our parents.
That's true.
Okay? So what I saw was excitement that I could come to a place and get what I need as far as information, but also get the energy, be around people who understand my journey as a Black woman in business. That was there too. So it was a range of emotions.
You said that we don't typically do the foundational things in business. What are some of those things? So
one, registering your business with the Secretary of State, making sure you get the EIN number, opening a business checking account, not using Cash App because that's dangerous. PayPal is not an accounting system. So simple things like that. Making sure that you are doing the necessary bookkeeping for your business because you need to be able to see where your money is going and how your money is coming in and understanding the cycle of money. When you understand the cycle and flow of money in your business, you can then begin to grow and scale the business and the infrastructure. Making sure you have an accountant, an attorney. You want to monitor your intellectual property. We have a lot of creatives who are always inventing and creating things. And so you want to make sure that no one's leveraging what you're creating. So things of that nature are what I'm talking about when I talk about the foundational aspects of the business.
So what should 2022 look like for a Black woman entrepreneur?
So one of the first things is something I'm doing right now. Next Saturday, I'm doing a virtual strategic planning session. So women that came to MogulCon learned a whole lot. Sure. Eyes were open. And so it's a ton of information, and when you walk out the door, life hits you.
Yeah, literally.
So while I have their attention and they have all this great information, let's put a strategy together. Let's look at what am I doing first, second, third, and fourth quarter? How am I engaging my clients? Let me go back and look at the flow of money, because when you look at the flow of money, what you will find is that there are peaks and valleys in your business. So how do I really capture the peak time in my business and double my income? So we'll look at your marketing channels, your supply channels. We're going to look at your key partners, how you communicate, and come up with a real strategy that you can execute on in the new year.
This is for my own personal curiosity. What does it look like going after advertising sponsors on the level that you've gotten on? Like, what is there a portfolio you should have put together,
Oh,
a strong digital
absolutely.
footprint?
So every year we do a sponsorship deck. But I will be honest, because we've been out here for so long and they can see the results of what I do, a lot of it's a telephone call, a conversation. Next week we'll be releasing a recap of MogulCon, and I'll share with them kind of what we did this year, what we thought was great, what we could do better. And I think the transparency in that is what brings them back, because they know that their money is being put to good use.
What's two of the biggest myths that you come across when people come into your consulting or just MogulCon? What are the two biggest myths or misconceptions?
Misconceptions. One is lowering the expectation because we're a black owned business. That's one. Two, that they can get, and I'll use this term, the hookup, right? Or that they're not going to have to pay as much. And that's a misconception, because what you're saying to me is you don't value my business.
Okay.
Now, I don't have that as much anymore, but I can remember in the early years that was an issue, because for some reason we don't value certain things. So we think that, oh, you're black, I'm black, I can just ask you and you'll tell me. But there has to be a level of respect in that this is how I make my money. This is how I run my business. So what we have to understand is I wouldn't do that to you, so don't do it to me.
Is that a reflection of the business itself? I'm just asking you because I know when I look at your stuff, I automatically know. I'm like, no, this
That's
is
what
not.
I said early on. Now I don't really have those challenges, right? Early in those beginning years. And I share that because I want to be relative to your audience, because that may be some of the things that they're dealing with early in their business. What we try to do is prepare the customer. So someone says to me, you don't do a whole lot of advertising for your consulting agency. I don't, because our business goes off of word of mouth. We're blessed that we don't have to do a lot of advertising because we have great customers. And those customers bring us more customers, more clients. And because we always operate at a level of excellence, one understanding that I do not run this company by myself, that everyone that is a part of my company works with me. And together we make it great and a great experience for our clients.
I'm over my time, but I got to get you while you're here. This notion of rejection,
Yes.
how do we counter that?
Great question. So one, you got to know who you are. Everybody is not for you. Everybody's not your client. And if you know that you're operating at your optimal point, you're giving the results, you see the transformations in your client, it's okay if somebody rejects you. Move on. The one thing I remember early on, I used to say, I'm going to try to get 10 no's in one day.
Really?
And I would knock on doors. I've owned several logistics companies, all types of companies. And I'll use my logistics company as an example. I would go into industrial areas. I would park my car. I would get out. I would have my collaterals and everything. I would have my company shirt on. And I'd say, I'm going to knock on 10 doors to try to get 10 no's. It never happened. Why? One, I was prepared. We have to prepare ourselves for the success that we want. So I never got the 10 no's in a day because I always knew who I was in the end and what I offered. And I never promised anything I couldn't deliver on. Sometimes we get super excited and we want to make all these promises, and then when it's time to pull the trigger, we can't do it. I only promise what I can deliver.
Okay. I guess my thought process is, how do you get that to translate into, because a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know, they get into this space where it's like, I'm too nervous to ask for partnerships and sponsors. So
And
how
you
do we
got to
get that
get
to
past
translate?
that. So just do it. You got to start somewhere. So one, get educated on the right way. Have your sponsorship deck. Understand what the win-win is for the client. Don't make it about you, because what they're not interested in is just slapping a logo on your event. There's no ROI for them. So put yourself in the sponsor shoes. What would make them want to sponsor your event? What are they getting out of it? Educate yourself. Find out what their initiatives are. Find out what their struggles are. Make sure that your goals and culture are aligned. those are some of the initial things that you want to look at. And also understanding the cycle for sponsorship. So there's a certain time you got to get your budget in. There's a certain time you got to get your proposal in. So those are all things that you want to be cognizant of if this is the route you're going to go.
Okay. What's one thing that you were proud of this year from MogulCon?
Oh my goodness. Is that Wells Fargo saw us in a bigger way. So every year since day one, they've always been there. But this year, they stepped up with a $50,000 investment.
I saw that, and y'all had the big check, and I was like, this is so huge.
Because what it says is, we believe in you. If you want to know if somebody believes in you, see if they put their money behind you.
I'm actually getting to that place. I actually agree with that. Like, it's like, people, I support you, yeah, but I need such and such. And then everybody starts backing away. It's like.
That's a big thing. Because if you look at, and I do look at this when I'm going after sponsorship, I look to see how the company spends their money. Who do they spend their money with? What do they support? Because their culture may not align with my culture. And that's the one thing that we're often remiss in doing, is making sure that we're aligned.
Final thoughts. Anything you want to leave with the viewers?
One of the things that I want to leave with your viewers is really take time to put a strategy in place. It will save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of disappointment. Strategy meaning, who do I want to do business with? And out of that list, why would they want to do business with me? Understand what value you bring to the table. Practice your storytelling. Help the client to be able to see themselves in the transformations that you give. And most of all, be a person of your word, because that is all you have at the end of the day.
How do people get in touch with you?
Real simple, FeliciaPhillips.com.
All right, I'm going to get her out of here, because if I don't, we're going to be here all day, because I don't get this opportunity often, and she's like a wealth of knowledge, so I try to get it when I'm here. But I'm not going to be greedy and selfish. So we're going to say thank you to our special guest today, Dr. Felicia Phillips. I'm just elated that you're here. I'm trying not to smile too much because this brings me joy. Plus, you're the last episode of filming, so yay me, we've done it. And yeah, we've done it. All right, so we will see you same time, same place on the Leadership Ben television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.